Some criminals are terrifying because they look dangerous. But the three men in this video were terrifying for the opposite reason. They looked normal. One used charm to lure young women. One invited young men into his home and buried many of them beneath the floor. And one lived as a husband, father, and church leader while secretly hunting people for decades. Tonight, on Nightfall Case Files, we are looking at three criminals whose ordinary lives hid some of the darkest crimes in American history. Case number 1, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy did not become infamous only because of the number of victims connected to him. He became infamous because of how he got close to them. Bundy understood something deeply disturbing. People lower their guard when danger does not look like danger. He often appeared calm, polite, educated, and confident. That image became part of his method. In several cases, Bundy was known for creating a false sense of vulnerability. He would pretend to be injured. He might wear a sling. He might use crutches. Then he would ask for help. To a stranger, it could look harmless. A young man asking for assistance. A person who needed someone to carry something to his car. But that moment of kindness could become the trap. Once he isolated a victim, Bundy's attacks were sudden and violent. His crimes often involved blunt force trauma and strangulation, methods that allowed him to attack quickly, quietly, and with control. He did not rely only on chaos. He relied on manipulation. He studied his surroundings. He moved across different states, and at the time, police departments in different jurisdictions did not always share information quickly. That helped him stay ahead for far too long. Bundy targeted young women. Many of them were students, daughters, sisters, people with ordinary lives that ended because they trusted the wrong person for just a few seconds. That is what makes his case so disturbing. He did not always force his way into someone's life. Sometimes he asked politely. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he looked like someone who needed help. And by the time the victim realized something was wrong, it was already too late. By 1978, Bundy had become one of the most wanted men in America. The FBI added him to its top 10 fugitives list. 5 days later, he was arrested in Pensacola, Florida, after a police officer stopped him while he was driving a stolen vehicle. An ordinary traffic stop helped end one of the most infamous manhunts in American criminal history. But even after his arrest, the question remained: how did someone so dangerous manage to appear so normal? That is the horror of Ted Bundy. He turned normal human kindness into a weapon. Case number 2, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy's case is one of the most disturbing examples of a normal public image hiding something horrifying. To the outside world, Gacy was a businessman. He owned a contracting company. He was active in his community. He attended public events. He even performed as a clown at parties and charity events. To people who did not know the truth, he could appear social, helpful, and ordinary. But behind that public face was a predator who targeted young men and boys. Gacy often lured victims with promises of work, money, alcohol, or a place to stay. Some were employees. Some were young men looking for an opportunity. Some were runaways or vulnerable teenagers. The trap was not always force at first. Sometimes it was trust. Sometimes it was the promise of a job. Sometimes it was the idea that this older, successful man could offer something useful. Once inside his home, Gacy used control and manipulation. One of the most infamous parts of his method was what he called the handcuff trick. He would convince victims that it was a joke, a demonstration, something harmless. But once they were restrained, the situation changed. Many of his victims were killed by strangulation. Investigators later discovered that many of the bodies had been buried in the crawl space beneath his home. That detail turned an ordinary suburban house into one of the darkest crime scenes in America. Think about that for a moment. A house in a neighborhood, a man running a business, neighbors passing by, visitors coming and going. And beneath the floor, investigators would eventually uncover the evidence of dozens of murders. In 1980, Gacy was convicted of murdering 33 young men and boys. Many of the victims were teenagers or young adults. The horror of the Gacy case is not only the number, it is the contrast, the clown costume, the community events, the contracting business, the ordinary home, and underneath all of it, a hidden graveyard. Gacy's mask worked because people saw what they expected to see: a businessman, a neighbor, a man involved in the community. But behind that mask was someone who used trust as a doorway. That is what made him so dangerous. He did not need every victim to fear him immediately. Sometimes he only needed them to accept the invitation. Case number 3, Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader may be one of the clearest examples of a double life in American criminal history. To the public, he looked ordinary. He had a wife, children, a job, a home. He was involved in his church. He even served in a leadership role. But behind that life, he was BTK. The name stood for bind, torture, kill. That name was not given to him by the public at first. He chose it. He wanted attention. He wanted fear. And for decades, Wichita, Kansas lived with that fear. Rader killed 10 people between 1974 and 1991. His victims included women, men, and children. Unlike Bundy, who often used charm and movement across states, Rader's crimes were built around planning, stalking, and control. He often targeted people in their own homes. That is part of what made the BTK case so terrifying. The home is supposed to be the safest place a person has. Rader turned that idea into a nightmare. He would watch, plan, wait, then attack when he believed he had control. His victims were often restrained and then killed by suffocation or strangulation. After the crimes, he communicated with police and media. He sent letters. He described himself. He wanted recognition. He wanted the city to know he was still there. For years, the case went cold. People wondered if BTK had died, or moved away, or been arrested for something else. But he was still living in plain sight. A family man, a church leader, a man people saw in ordinary places. Then, in 2005, his need for attention helped expose him. Rader sent a floppy disk to police. Investigators recovered digital information from it. That information helped lead them to his church, and then to him. After decades of fear, Dennis Rader was arrested. He confessed, and he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms. The most disturbing part of the BTK case is not only what he did. It is where he was while people were afraid. He was not far away. He was not hidden in the wilderness. He was living among them, going to church, going to work, going home to his family, wearing the mask of an ordinary man. 3 criminals, 3 masks. Ted Bundy used charm and fake vulnerability to get close to victims. John Wayne Gacy used opportunity, trust, and his home to trap young men. Dennis Rader used patience, planning, and a normal public life to hide for decades. Their crimes were different. Their methods were different. But the lesson is the same. Danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it asks for help. Sometimes it offers a job. Sometimes it sits in church on Sunday morning. And that is what makes these cases so disturbing. Because the scariest monsters are not always the ones hiding in the dark. Sometimes, they are the ones everyone thinks they know. So tell me, which case disturbed you the most? Case 1, Case 2, or Case 3? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.